Hey guys, what's up? Let's move on now to the second class in chapter 7. Here we're going to be talking about another type of connection between blueprints. So what we'll talk about now is the cast type connection. Okay, so cast type, have you heard about that? What is it? Well, let's try and explain it. It works as if it was a transmission or it's broadcasting something. It's sending a message. Okay, so it works the same way as other connections, but you can specify where the message is being sent. So the best way to explain this is to see it in practice. So what I'll do here is I'll open up our set material blueprint and let me show you how it works. So we can type in cast 2, and when I type cast 2, it gives me several different options, doesn't it? Different versions of cast 2. So when I add this to our context sensitive, these are all the cast type nodes. It's like it's sending a message to someone. That's probably the best way to explain it. And you can see here who it can send the message to. So this message is being directed to someone, and there are several different types of nodes that will accept the message. For example, we can do cast to actor there. So there's the actor, and that's going to cast to our actor class. And so there's a cast to actor, which means we're connecting to an actor, right? But there are some details also to this cast that are mandatory. So it's mandatory that we tell it what the cast object is. And so that's what it is, so what you're looking for. And it generates a lot of information in Unreal for us, just to help us make the direct connections like we did in the blueprints. So what we use most, and what we use most in this particular course, is connecting things that are not in the scene. So let's suppose I want to connect to the first person, a classic example really. So our first person is not in the scene, but it's in the game mode, right? So it's part of the game, but it's almost like it's in the background, not actually visible in our scene. So when we push play, there's a spawn that is generated in the scene, so a position. Now, if I searched the first person, I can't find it through a public variable. So in that case, what can I do? Well, in that case, I can use this cast node. And why is that? Because then I can get the routine and set it all up. For example, I can set up get player character, get player controller, or get game mode, right? Cool. So I can get a few background things, a few things that are in behind the scenes, we could say, from our game. And these are more often used when you want to get this kind of actor. So let's think of an example. Let's say, for instance, we can get a character, and that node then is ready to use. We can get player controller as well. And in case we need to manipulate something in it, then we can do so. So we can also get game mode. So if we want to change anything in the game mode via the blueprint, we can do it here. So just a few examples. So when I insert this node, I can do that here for the get player character. It doesn't mean that I can access everything that's part of it. For example, let's open the ArcViz character. And let's suppose I want to do something, I want to get something from here. So let's suppose I want to get our camera. I can just pull out and type here, get cine camera. I can't find it, can I? So why is that? Well, because I got a reference here, but it's not exactly the object itself. Okay. So I want to connect to my player character. If I do want to connect to my player character, I must tell it that I want to get my player character and I want to connect to it. But how do I connect to it? I have to cast to it. So if I pull a string from it and type cast to, and in this case, I cast to BP ArcViz character, which is a first person blueprint. So now I'm making a connection here, right? I'm getting a player character and cast into it. And that cast node is exactly what this is used for. We'll be able to then use it to control the game mode and control many other things within it. Now, later on, we'll go into a little bit more detail about it. And we'll work on an example actually where we can see a lot more of the usability within this. But let's move on. Otherwise, this class is going to be really long. So let's suppose I'm connected here, and let's talk about the Cine camera as our example. Let's suppose I want to control my camera through this blueprint. Okay, so let's say I want to change the focus as an example. And that's all here, right? So we have our focal length here. So let's say I want to change this focal length. Maybe we want to change the standard value set to 13. Maybe we want to change our focal length to 40. So let's say I want to change this value here. Well, what can I do here? Well, when I make this connection, this pin's opened up for me here, right? Cast to BP ArcViz character. In other words, this is the same thing as the public variable reference we saw in the other classes. From this pin, we can pull the information from the other one. Look, see, we can get Cine camera. So now we can find our Cine camera. So now I'm in the set material blueprint, but I can make a connection to the camera. Now, obviously, you'll see later when we start developing the blueprints how important this is, because sometimes through a blueprint, you'll be working on things like menus or widgets, interactions between menus, and you'll need to be connecting between different blueprints. You need to connect, for example, between one blueprint to another, to a widget, to another blueprint. So you need to be able to connect between different blueprints, and this is a really good way to do it. Obviously, we'll see that in more detail later on. So here, as our example shows, we have our Cine camera. Now, I can take this off here and bring it here to link it up. So when I press C on the keyboard, it's going to connect and it should execute something. Let's say I want to change the focal length, right? So I can create a flip-flop out of here. Remember, it works like a light switch on or off, and that will alternate between the two values that we set, or whatever option we want A to be. Let's say that A is going to edit the focal length. So let me search here, set current focal length. There we go, set focal length. Cool. And I'll set it here. Let's try 60 just to exaggerate the example, and plug that into A. So when I push C, it's going to change the focal length to 60. And when I press it again, just do a copy, Control W, plug it in there. Let's set it to initial value of 13. And let's plug that in. Okay, so let's see what we did here. We're in our blueprint of set material blueprint, the one that's in the sphere, right? So from this blueprint, what I'm doing is I'm connecting to the first person blueprint. And let's see what happens. If I push C now, see that? So C will allow me to change the focal length. So it changes, it goes from 60, which is very close, back to 13. Of course, it's not using the timeline animation to it, but it's just to demonstrate it in practice. So it's a really good function, this kind of connection that's used through the cast. It's more often used for this kind of actor that we mentioned at the beginning of the class, which are the actors that aren't seen. So the actors that are available, but they may not be actually in our scene as such. So we'll talk a lot more about these types of connections later on because they're really useful in our ArcViz experiences. We'll leave it there now and we'll move on to the next lesson.